One decision by the FIA just changed the entire conversation in Formula One. Because Ferrari brought a rear wing so extreme, several teams believed it might never be allowed to race. A system that does not just open like a normal drag reduction system. It rotates, almost flipping its aerodynamic profile when the car hits the straight, switching from high downforce to what engineers are calling flight mode. And if the numbers are correct, this design could unlock between 8 and 10 kilometers per hour of extra top speed. In modern Formula One, that kind of gain is enormous. It means easier overtakes, stronger defense, and a completely different race strategy. But here is where the story becomes explosive. After the Australian Grand Prix revealed Ferrari still needed more straight-line efficiency, the team accelerated development and prepared this radical upgrade for the Chinese Grand Prix. Rival teams immediately started asking questions. Engineers began studying every detail. Some even expected the FIA to intervene. Instead, the FIA inspected the system and confirmed Ferrari can run it, which means one thing. Mercedes and the rest of the grid may suddenly be facing a Ferrari with the most dangerous straight-line weapon of the 2026 season. And the detail that makes this situation even more dramatic is connected to something that happened during the Australian Grand Prix, a moment almost nobody noticed. But the moment engineers finished analyzing the data from the Australian Grand Prix, one detail immediately stood out. Ferrari had built a very strong car. The SF26 looked balanced, stable in medium speed corners, extremely powerful when exiting slow turns. Both drivers looked confident. Charles Leclerc pushed aggressively through the opening laps. Lewis Hamilton, in his first season wearing Ferrari red, looked calm and comfortable inside the cockpit. For most fans watching the race, Ferrari already looked like a genuine contender. But inside the garages, engineers were focused on something much more precise. Straight-line efficiency. Every acceleration zone, every speed trace, every energy deployment phase. And the numbers revealed a small but important weakness. Ferrari was fast, very fast, but at the end of the longest straights in Melbourne, another car was consistently reaching slightly higher top speeds. Mercedes, not by a huge margin, nothing dramatic on television, but enough to appear clearly in the telemetry. And in Formula One, small advantages repeated lap after lap become extremely dangerous. A few extra kilometers per hour can change overtaking opportunities. It can change defensive strategy. It can even change how teams deploy electrical energy during a race. Ferrari engineers immediately understood what this meant. Their car had strong traction, strong balance, strong overall pace. But on circuits with long straights, they needed more efficiency, less drag, more speed. And that realization triggered a decision inside Maranello that surprised several teams in the paddock. Because Ferrari already had a radical solution waiting. A concept they had quietly tested earlier in the year during the Bahrain tests. At the time, most rival teams believed it was simply an experimental prototype. Interesting, unusual, but probably too extreme to introduce early in the season. But after studying the data from Australia, Ferrari changed the plan. They accelerated the development schedule. They prepared several versions of the system. And they made a bold decision. They would bring the Macarena rear wing to the Chinese Grand Prix. And the moment that information began circulating through the paddock, the reaction was immediate. Because if the early data from testing was accurate, Ferrari's new rear wing was not just another upgrade. It was something that could completely change how the entire grid fights on the straights. But the real shock inside the paddock came when rival engineers finally understood how Ferrari's new rear wing actually works. At first, many teams believed the nickname was just a joke. The Macarena, something journalists created because the wing seemed to move in a strange way during testing. But once technical images from Bahrain and early development footage started circulating between teams, the reaction changed immediately. Because Ferrari had not simply adjusted the rear wing, they had reinvented how it behaves at high speed. In a traditional Formula One system, the rear wing opens slightly when drag reduction activates. A small slot appears. Air flows through that gap. Drag decreases a little. Top speed increases slightly. It is effective but limited. Ferrari looked at that idea and pushed it much further. Instead of opening a small slot, the main aerodynamic plane of the rear wing rotates. And the movement is dramatic. When the car exits a corner and enters straight-line mode, the wing can rotate between roughly 180 degrees and almost 270 degrees. That means the aerodynamic profile almost flips upside down. In corners, the wing produces strong downforce. The rear of the car stays planted, stable, predictable. But the moment the driver accelerates onto a straight, everything changes. The system activates, the wing rotates, airflow reorganizes across the rear of the car, and the most important effect appears immediately. Drag almost disappears. Engineers inside the paddock started describing the two configurations in very simple terms: corner mode and flight mode, because when the wing rotates into straight configuration, it almost produces lift instead of downforce, allowing the car to cut through the air far more efficiently. And that is exactly what Ferrari was chasing. Speed. Pure speed. Some technical estimates suggest the concept could deliver between 8 and 10 kilometers per hour more top speed compared with more conservative active wing systems. In Formula One, that kind of advantage is enormous. It can decide overtakes before drivers even reach the braking zone. It can allow a driver to attack while using less electrical energy, and it can make defending extremely difficult for the car ahead. But the moment rival engineers realized how aggressive the rotation actually was, the conversation inside the paddock changed. Because the question was no longer just about performance. It became about the rules. The 2026 regulations allow active aerodynamics. Front wings and rear wings can change configuration between corner mode and straight mode. But Ferrari's interpretation pushes that concept further than most teams expected. Much further. And that is exactly why several teams immediately began studying the design in detail. Because if Ferrari truly found a way to erase that much drag on the straights, the competitive order of the entire championship could change much sooner than anyone expected. And this is exactly the moment when the entire paddock started asking a much bigger question. Not just how fast Ferrari's new wing could be, but what it could do to the balance of power in the championship. Because once the FIA inspected the system and confirmed that Ferrari could run it, the reaction across Formula One changed immediately. The debate about legality disappeared. Now, the focus was on performance. And that is where things became very uncomfortable for teams like Mercedes. Because Shanghai is not just another circuit on the calendar. It is one of the most revealing tracks when it comes to aerodynamic efficiency. The lap begins with long, sweeping corners that demand stability and downforce. Drivers must carry speed through a massive opening turn that seems to tighten forever. Then the track opens up, acceleration builds, and eventually the cars reach the most important section of the circuit, the back straight, more than a kilometer of full throttle. Drivers remain flat out for several seconds. And during those seconds, one thing matters more than anything else: drag. The less drag the car has, the faster it accelerates. The faster it reaches the braking zone, the easier it becomes to overtake. And this is exactly why Ferrari decided to accelerate the development of the Macarena rear wing after Australia. Because their simulations suggested something very interesting. If a system worked exactly as designed, the SF26 could enter its low-drag, flight mode earlier than most rivals on the long straight. And that could translate into several extra kilometers per hour before the braking zone. That difference might sound small, but in Formula One, it is enormous. It means closing the gap on the car ahead before the braking zone. It means attacking later. It means forcing the driver in front to defend aggressively. And if the Ferrari also exits the final corner with better traction, the overtake becomes extremely difficult to stop. This is exactly why engineers across the paddock began studying Ferrari's system so carefully. Because if the Macarena wing works exactly as expected, it could become one of the most powerful aerodynamic weapons in the entire 2026 season. But the concept also comes with serious risks. Because a system that rotates between 180 and 270 degrees operates within a very narrow performance window. The transition from corner mode to straight mode must be perfectly controlled. If the balance of the car shifts too quickly, the rear of the car could become unstable just as the driver accelerates. Crosswinds could amplify that instability. And Shanghai is well known for unpredictable wind conditions across the backstraight. There's also the question of mechanical reliability. A rotating wing places enormous stress on its actuators and structural components. Every lap, every activation, every high-speed vibration. If something fails, the consequences are immediate. The wing could become stuck in flight mode, leaving the car with almost no rear downforce in corners. Or it could remain locked in corner mode, creating huge drag on the straights. Either scenario could destroy a race instantly. That is why Ferrari spent weeks refining the system before approving it for competition. Because if everything works exactly as expected, the reward could be enormous. Not just for one race, but potentially for the entire championship. And that is why the Chinese Grand Prix suddenly became more than just the second race of the season. It became the first real test of Ferrari's most radical aerodynamic idea. Because once the cars reached full speed on the long Shanghai Straight, the entire paddock would finally see the truth. Either the Macarena rear wing would prove to be just another clever experiment, or Ferrari would suddenly possess one of the most dangerous straight-line weapons in Formula One.